My name is Doyle Canning. Thank you so much for having me here. Are you live?
I'm just recording.
Okay. I'm going to ask that we don't post live videos of this today, in part because we haven't launched the campaign yet. And I can say more about our launch, but it's not until next month, and we want to sort of keep them guessing until then. Not sort of give away too much about our strategy to the outside world at this point. So let's see. My name is Doyle Canning, and I live here in Eugene. I'm a mother. I have two young children, Almina and Dominic. They're 4 and 6. And I'm really running for Congress because of them and because of what is happening in our country right now, in our community, and to our planet that is threatening the future for the youngest children as well as the people of my generation. And it's really a time where we can't hold back, and we must step forward boldly and fight for our future, because it really is at stake. I just came here today from the Saturday market where we had the so-called God, Guns, and Trump rally taking place. It was a very small rally. There were maybe 5 Trump supporters there. They were vastly outnumbered by several hundred people from Eugene who were completely surrounding the well-armed small group of white males who showed up. And that's really kind of a metaphor for what this moment is. The far right and white nationalist elements are emboldened by the occupant of the White House, his agenda, his rhetoric, and they think that they're going to take power, but they're wrong. And we, together, us, need to step forward and say, not today. 2020 is going to be a progressive tsunami for this country. I know it. I feel it. It's happening. Bernie is leading it. And you see the groundswell of support. You've seen, I'm sure, the maps that the New York Times did last week of all of the grassroots donations. And they had to make like another map that didn't have Bernie on it because it was just like drowned out all the other candidates. And this is the moment that we're in, a moment where people-powered grassroots campaigns are resonating like never before, and we have an ability to scale them at a level that we never have before. And so my campaign for Congress here in the 4th District of Oregon is really aspiring to be and will be that kind of a campaign. 100% people powered, no corporate money, and really rooted in community, really building upon the progressive values that we have in our district that you saw on display today down at the Saturday market, to say, that we deserve a champion and we deserve it now. We have had a fairly progressive representative for 34 years. And almost as long as I've been alive. 2020 has got to be about the future, and it's got to be about kicking off a new decade of transformative changes in this country. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the squad in Congress, they are really leading this movement that is bringing a kind of activist and no holds barred kind of leadership inside the halls of Congress to perform rigorous oversight of the Trump administration, to call clearly for impeachment And I think in 2021, that will be about making sure there's accountability for what this administration has done, criminal charges, et cetera, which did not happen after the economy was imploded by Wall Street in 2008, which is a lot of the reason we're here now today in the crisis that we're in. So this Congress that we're going to kick off in 2021 is going to have a squad of so many more. And we are going to be leading both the repair of what has been done in the last 4 years and the future agenda of a progressive policy in the United States. And so I'm still working on my platform. Like I said, I haven't formally launched the campaign yet. We're going to be launching on the 21st of September. The vision is to have a big rally at that time, hundreds of people, music, family-friendly kind of festive atmosphere to really kick this thing off right. And so we're going to start building towards that the 21st of September. And between now and then, we'll be working on developing our materials, developing our platform, organizing in the community. We're going to be building what we're calling campaign committees in different locations, among different constituencies. So Carol was mentioning earlier, she was at our first organizing meeting last weekend, and we had folks who are going to be creating, for example, friendly neighbors for Canning, Lane Community College students for Canning, UO students for Canning, Cottage Grove for Canning, etc. And those are going to be really grassroots groups that are going to power this movement and show the breadth and depth of support that we have across the district and across a diverse set of Oregonians who are ready to fight for stronger representation and a no corporate money candidate. So that's kind of what we're up to, and I can try to answer any questions. I'm sure you have a few. So that's it. Thank you. Yeah.
What have you done that you're most proud of, that says what you care about the most, that you spend the most time on, career-wise?
Yeah. That's a great question. So the question was, what am I most proud of, or kind of accomplished that shows who I am? I co-founded an organization that's called the Center for Story-Based Strategy. And the mission of the organization is to amplify the impact of grassroots social movements with more effective storytelling and narrative strategy. And so my whole career has been dedicated to supporting grassroots movements and grassroots community organizing alliances across many different communities. So I've worked with, for example, farm workers down in Florida who were organizing for better wages and conditions and human rights on the job in the tomato fields of Florida. And supporting them. I've through the Center for Story-Based Strategy worked closely with leaders in the climate justice movement who are opposing new fossil fuel projects and advocating for indigenous rights. For example, at the UNFCCC, the big United Nations climate process, accompanying a delegation of indigenous peoples from North America to those climate talks and supporting and amplifying their work there to fight for indigenous rights and climate justice. I helped to support the founding of an alliance called Homes for All that formed after the implosion of the housing market and was really an alliance of homeowners who were getting thrown out of their homes by big banks and renters who were experiencing predatory capital kind of moving into the rental market as a new place to exploit their to find a profit center. and buying up all these foreclosed homes and apartment buildings and creating this kind of Wall Street controlled rental market in some of the major cities that were hardest hit by the crisis. So anyway, that was around 2012. And so those are some of the movements that I've been part of. There are dozens and dozens more. I've trained thousands of grassroots organizers. I've worked with hundreds of organizations all over the country. And I wrote a book about story-based strategy that's called Reimagining Change. And you can read all about it. You'd probably enjoy it. Yeah.
I know that once your campaign is kicked off, you'll have lots of information for us, but can you give us a few examples of how you differ with our current representative on maybe 3 different issues?
Sure. So I think our current representative, as I mentioned, has been in office for a long time, since 1986. And at that time, in the late 80s, he was a founder of the Congressional Progressive Caucus with Bernie Sanders and Maxine Waters. So to me, this demonstrates that this district wants a progressive and can support and sustain a progressive representative, and has done for over 30 years. The difference, I think, is what does progressive mean in 2020? And the kind of new generation of leadership that is coming to power and saying progressive in 2020 means no corporate money. And progressive in 2020 means no new fossil fuels. And progressive in 2020 means we demand action on gun violence. And progressive in 2020 means just a more intersectional feminist kind of approach to leadership, and more of a commitment to racial justice. And that's something that I have demonstrated over 20 years of my career. That's who I am. That's how I live my life. And so that's how I might differ in my approach. Yeah.
Assuming that she doesn't get primaried out on her ass, would you support Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House?
That is a great question. Would I support Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House? It's a very hypothetical question. Shahid Buttar, who is running in her district in San Francisco, is an old friend of mine, a personal friend of mine. So he and I worked together in the anti-war movement against the Iraq War. So I've been in touch with Shahid, big fan and friend. And so I don't know. I think I would likely kind of caucus with my Justice Democrats friends, and we would figure out what the best strategy would be.
Yeah, it would depend on who's up against her. Thanks.
Yeah.
Regarding Medicare for all, do you have a position on the public option?
Do I have a position on the public option? I need to be educated about the nuances of the different positions. My position is healthcare is a human right, and there's no place in the system for for-profit insurance companies. That's my position. So I don't know how that squares with the public option. Can you tell me?
Public option means that there is a private insurance option.
Okay.
And,
Wouldn't that be the private option?
well, it's confusing.
Okay.
So, as I understand it, Bernie strongly opposes having the private insurance option or the public option.
Okay.
And I agree with that because I think that if you have any private insurance involved, it's an option. Therefore, the public has an option, the private insurance has
Right.
an option. It's setting it up so that the public option will probably fail over the years. Because the people that were most in need would go to the public option, and then the private insurance company could be back in and say, hey, we told you that the government-run insurance would not be successful. So I think it's wrong to have a public option, because that would mean private insurance.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
That's the way I understand it. Maybe other people
Yeah, I mean,
Fazio wants the public option.
I
I
see.
think that's a mistake.
I see. Okay.
So you probably want to.
Study this. Yes. Yes. So I think there's this conversation going on. I feel like it was in the first round of debates where it was like, do you support abolishing private health insurance? And Warren and Sanders said yes. And Harris said yes, but then backtracked on that. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm still thinking about this. I'm like open to feedback because I'm not an expert in healthcare policy. I am an expert in climate policy. And that's what I spent my law school focused on. But I think for me, it's like we need to create a system that guarantees everyone in America access to the health care that they need, period. And I will, you know, defer to experts on the best way to accomplish that goal. But that is the goal.
So I think it might be a distinguishing difference between you and Peter DeFazio, which I don't agree with him. And so, yes. do
Okay.
that, please,
Okay.
because I think
Do you have any materials I should look at?
I haven't worked with Medicare for All here locally. I don't know if anybody here has, but that would be an excellent source, Medicare for All.
Yeah, okay.
Valdez, Bravo, you know, him.
Okay.
Charlie Swanson.
Yeah, I would love to sit down with them
We
and
were going to have
yeah.
one of them here, but I figured that with the video and your speaking, we would just fill the 2 hours.
Right.
But we were gonna invite one of them to come talk about Medicare for all.
Okay.
I don't know Valdez, I would want to put you in touch with him.
Yeah.
He's been working on it at the state level.
Yeah, there are people who know a lot more about this than I do, and I want to
He was our brain.
learn from them. Yeah.
Is he
Great.
still a trustee at Portland Community College?
Is he what?
Is he still a trustee at Portland Community?
He's on the board.
He's on the board.
For which college?
Portland Community College?
Yes.
PCC.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's also working with the VA.
Yeah. Yeah, that's his day job.
Yeah. So I'll get you in touch with him.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Carol.
Are you, what is the status of you being endorsed by the Justice Democrats?
It's an ongoing
It's what?
conversation.
The process
Yeah.
is ongoing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Prior to 1973, our healthcare was not for profit. But Nixon signed the HMO Act in 1973, and that's where we are today.
Created this
So
whole
that has
system,
been
yeah.
repealed,
Okay.
while at the same time we bring in Medicare for all.
Right.
So that's something to look into.
Okay.
also.
Great. Thank you.
What would you do to reduce military spending and bring troops home from all of our deployments all over the world and stop the wars in Syria and Iran and all the places where the U.S. start wars? How can you change that? What would be your, for example, you said earlier that you were going to do investigations. You're going to bust open the pinata about information so people would know what's going on.
Yeah.
So one person, that's one of the things one person can do.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other things you could do.
Yep.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to do everything in my power. And the way our Constitution works is Congress has the sole authority to authorize war. But as you all know, presidents from Vietnam to now have like gotten around that. And so, to have intervention of various kinds, from Central America to Iraq, to Syria, whatever. And so, I think for me, my work in the anti-war movement for my generation, has been mostly about Iraq and Israel-Palestine. And so my work in the anti-war movement was focused on two things. One was war profiteers and really exposing Halliburton, Bechtel, these large contractors who were cashing in on the U.S. invasion and occupation of Iraq to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. So one focus of mine has been about the military-industrial complex and not just weapons makers, although that's significant, but also there's a whole kind of infrastructure there to occupy other countries. And it's big business. The other focus for me has been working with the Iraq Veterans Against the War, who are now called About Face. And I actually did that rebranding with them. I worked very, very closely with them almost since their inception. And the About Face Veterans Against the War is a membership organization of veterans of post 9/11 U.S. intervention. So a lot of folks who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, but also in drone operations and other things. And so the Iraq Veterans Against the War, their platform is to not just end the occupation, but to support reparations for the people of Iraq and to fully fund and support veterans in terms of healthcare and also mental health care. And so they have a whole agenda around the VA, but they also have a whole agenda around exactly what you're saying, ending U.S. intervention that costs lives and destabilizes countries. And so there's a political action committee called Common Defense that I am in talks with, who is led by veterans of my generation and has a similar kind of platform. And so I will be talking with them about, what their agenda is and how I can be a champion for it. Okay, so I see 1, 2, 3, so yeah.
Given the size and extent of Congressional District 4, what sort of support from your campaign staff here in Central Wayne County do you anticipate needing in order to build the kind of campaign movement to win in this district?
Like, what is our operation going to look like? Is that
What sort of
support?
Do you want to have from people who help your campaign?
Yeah, so I was talking a little bit about these campaign committees. And so those groups are really kind of the grassroots engine of the campaign. We're not going to have the support of the traditional establishment unions and organizations. There's going to be a lot of rank and file people in those unions and organizations who are going to support us, but in terms of the apparatus, it's probably not going to come our way. We're not we're not relying on that. So we need to build our own grassroots structures and movement and network. And so the vision is to do that through these kind of grassroots committees that are based in neighborhoods, on campuses, and around certain identity or interest groups. Like, for example, there's a climate group forming, and there's an API group forming, things like that. So the vision is that each of those committees will have a chairperson, and that chairperson will sit on the campaign council. And that council will meet every week and coordinate and, do the field work of the campaign. So this is modeled after the campaign structure of Representative Barbara Lee. And it's really trying to be the change that we want to see, and build a movement. So that's sort of what we envision. And then in terms of the campaign's kind of capacity and infrastructure, Our budget right now is $500,000. We think we can win this race on $500,000. The incumbent has over $1.3 million already in the bank, in cash. And a lot of that money, getting back to that military industrial complex stuff, some of it is coming from defense contractors, fossil fuel companies, the health insurance industry, the usual suspects. And we're not going to have that. So we're going to be doing a lot of grassroots fundraising, a lot of house parties, concerts, online small dollar fundraising, and trying to build our movement and finance this campaign just with the support of regular people. And so I'm in the process right now of hiring a campaign manager. We expect to have that person in place by the time we kick off in September. And, we'll sort of start there and then have probably a very small staff, but a lot of volunteers. So, yeah.
Just along the same line as what Grace asked, have you received any blowback from the DCCC as far as the fact that you are going to be challenging an incumbent?
So the first task that you have to do as a candidate is you have to find a treasurer and someone willing to handle the money and basically do the accounting and FEC compliance and put together the reports for the FEC and all of that. This is something that you can do yourself. And I went to law school, I could probably figure this out. But I wanted to work with a compliance firm and make sure that it was really done right, and because I've never done this before. And so that's kind of the first vendor that you have to call. And I could not find anyone in Oregon willing to do that for me. It could just be, Oregon's really small. And then I called a firm in Seattle that was recommended to me by someone on the Bernie campaign, actually. And they were like, D-trip policy, we can't work with you. So I did find a firm in California. You'll probably be hearing about that from my opposition, saying I'm working with my campaign is based in California. My accountant is in California, and she is the only person who was willing to take this on. We were referred to her through some networks related to the Justice Democrats. So, yes, and it was very discouraging for me as a first-time candidate. I'll never forget it when I called this firm in Seattle, and they were all smiles and talking to me until they figured out that I was running a primary challenge, and then they said, this conversation is over. So, yeah, you had something.
I'd like to know, what have you done, what are you doing now, and what will you do to get Bernie elected?
Great question. So what have I done? Not enough. I wish I had done more. So I grew up in New Hampshire and Vermont, and I have a vintage button that my mom gave me that says Bernie for Burlington 86. So I've, been in the Bernie orbit since I was this high. And my husband worked on Bernie's House race as a field organizer in Vermont. I think that was about 2001 or 2 or something like that. We didn't get together till 10 years later, but we were friends in college. And anyway, so we both went to school in Vermont. That's where we met. And so he was more connected with the Progressive Party and Bernie's campaign at that time. I was more smash the system that time in my life. And anyway, so that's ancient history. More recently, in 2016, I was home with my 2 young children at that time. They were a baby and a toddler. And so I wasn't getting involved other than social media. And I regret that. I wish that I had done more. But I also had this attitude of oh, Bernie's going to win Oregon. It doesn't really matter what I do. I can cheer from the sidelines. But, then Trump was elected. And that's part of why I'm running now. Because we can't just cheer from the sidelines. We have to go all in. And we can't let what happened in 2016 happen again. And I think that Bernie has the best shot right now at beating Trump because he is oriented towards working class people. So what will I do to get Bernie elected? Well, I have to focus on getting myself elected. And I think, I would very much like to seek the endorsement of Bernie and coordinate our campaigns, but that's kind of up to his campaign. So your support in that would be great, and maybe we could make that alliance happen. But I don't know, it's kind of up to them. And my guess is that they won't want to do that until much later in the process. There's a long time between now and May, and a lot of things are going to happen, and I don't know where we'll be then, but my hope is that the primary ballot will say Bernie for president, Canning for Congress. Yeah.
My perception from having gone to the organization meeting
Mm-hmm.
and sensing that a lot of new faces that were young to me are strong burners, I am thinking that this campaign will help locally engage the young people that are basically burners to believe that there's a purpose for them to be more active than they otherwise would be. So I can see the two working really strongly together. So I think that would be helpful
Yeah.
to help get Bernie elected, to help the force here in Oregon.
Yeah. And yes. And so part of the vision is to really build the base. The path to victory for my campaign is the same path to victory for Bernie in Oregon. It's the same path. And that path is, we believe that we need 75,000 votes to win the primary, and 75,900 or something voted for Bernie in 2016. So we know that this is possible. And we also know that, things have changed since 2016. And one of the things that has changed is over 300,000 millennials have been registered to vote in Oregon just in 2017. 300,000. So we need to figure out how many of them are in this district. And like me, I registered motor voter at the DMV while I was literally juggling my children, and didn't realize that I had to take another step to register as a Democrat. I thought that I had done it, but apparently I hadn't. And so, part of my goal and the path to victory here is to make sure that all those young voters who are registered motor voter get registered to vote in the primary, and that we activate that base of support to energize the base of the Democratic Party for the progressive side. And so we have some thoughts about how to do that. We're talking with some other campaigns about creating a kind of alliance of campaigns in Oregon in 2020 that are running on no corporate money. That's sort of the baseline. And that we would create a kind of slate and kind of share resources. And one of the things we might share is developing an app that would make it really easy and fun to register as a Democrat on your phone. And and that we could kind of go in on creating that together, and then the field for these different campaigns would have an easy way to just like register people at the Saturday market or hanging out at the EMU or what have you, kind of like the Burn app, right? But also my dream is that we would also make it run on what's called a bot or an artificial intelligence, so that it's you chat in your messenger application and it'll say, are you registered to vote? Check, and you press a button and it says like, no, you're not. Like, check this box and you can get and it makes it very easy to do, and that we can get a kind of viral scale that you can't get one person at a time. So our goal is to register 25,000 new Democrats in Oregon's 4th district by April. And that's some of the ways that we're thinking about doing that. So if we were to coordinate with other campaigns, we could just get more and more scale around doing that. So I think you're right. Like, all of this is a net gain for the Bernie campaign and the progressive side, generally speaking. And we need to be building together as a movement if we're going to win. Like, all of us can't necessarily work. Like, if we all work separately, we're not gonna get the result we want. So, yeah.
I know a lot of millennials that don't want to register Democrat.
Right.
Then win the primary, would be running in front of an independent third party.
No. And that's part of when you file as a Democrat in Oregon, you sign on a dotted line that you won't do that. Yeah, if you're a major party candidate, you can't change parties and run in the general. And so it's a choice I'm making to, fight for the Democratic Party. Yeah. And it's, it's the same sort of dynamic that Bernie is dealing with, of this is the party we have, and it is dynamic, and there is an opportunity to revitalize the Democratic Party as a progressive and more working class oriented political force. Yes. Yeah. And so this is why we're in this, and this is what we're here to do. Yeah.
There's an effort in the Democratic Party of Oregon to open up the primary to unaffiliated voters. And there's a committee that's been put together, and I guess the next SCC meeting they're going to have a vote about that.
Oh, wow.
So this weekend is one SCC meeting, so it'll be the next meeting, which they say is time for it to happen in the primary in May. As I understand from the grapevine, the biggest force against this happening is our Lane County Democratic leadership. That other counties in Oregon have already endorsed it. So anyway, there's a process that I don't understand because I'm not working in the Democratic Party, even though I'm a Democrat. But there is a committee that's supposed to be going in that direction. So there's a slim chance. If we could get ourselves together here in Lane County, there would probably be a better chance. But I submitted 2 resolutions to the platform committee of the Democratic Party of Lane County probably 6 weeks ago, and didn't get anything back. Charlie Swanson, and who chairs it. So I reminded him again after a few weeks, and he said, "Well, Carol, this won't pass here in Lane County." So there's no reason to bring it forward in the platform. And I responded that we still needed to know that we had the option and that we should have the discussion about it. And he never responded back after I did that. So we are probably the force that will prevent an open primary for unaffiliated voters right here in Lake County.
We also want to know who the hell is blocking it.
Well, I think we
Yeah. But we want to be able to, we want to have it on the record.
Yeah, we want to have them on the record, so I got no response after I said basically that. So that's where it is in Lake County, folks. It's probably going to stop right here. But we have a chance.
Well, We'll get you elected, we'll work.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, let's take just a few more comments.
Back to Medicare.
Yeah.
Back to the medical. If Medicare as it stands is 65 or older, and it only covers catastrophic hospital stays.
Right.
For anything else you have to pay, you have to buy Part B,
Right.
and supplemental insurance, and a Part C. So I'm spending a little over $300 a month, but it covers everything. If it came up, it doesn't cover glasses or dental. So if a bill to strengthen Medicare as it stands came up in the House, would you co-sponsor that?
To strengthen Medicare as it stands, as opposed to like creating Medicare for all.
Dental, eyewear, and to do away with Part B.
Well, I would have to make sure I understand it better. But I would do everything in my power to make sure that my constituents have access to health care. And that could be one thing that we could do, but I don't think it would be the end of what we would do.
That would be like opening a crack in the door
Right.
for
Yeah.
Medicare for all.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Anybody else?
Are there any fundraisers going on that people can attend?
Oh my gosh. It's so funny you ask.
Viking brag. Everybody's invited.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah, it's going to be really good. And then there's another one on Wednesday night, I believe, hosted by James Barber at his home. So I think you're all invited to that too. And then we're planning one in Ashland. And, if you sign up on our list, which I can pass around, sign-in sheet here, I'll make sure that you get on our newsletter. We're starting to do just a weekly kind of update about what's happening. And yeah, so you can get that and be in the loop. Our website now is just intentionally like blank. And we're working on the website, and we'll be launching a full website in September when we launch the campaign officially. So if you want to be in the know, you got to get on the email list right now. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I do.